All right, we're back with another great podcast. Been a busy week, busy last few weeks.
Got to
Busy
cram them
weeks.
in before everybody gets into camp.
Yep. And then now I've dipping into my reaching out to these like sports influencer guys. Wait till you see some of these guys. This could be great. You'll be in camp anyway, so you won't.
But there's some characters coming
Oh,
out
that'll
there.
be great. We have a great guest on today, Coach Dunn from Old Tappan High School. I've coached with Coach. He is one of the legends in high school football coaching. He's won multiple state championships. He won state group championship. He's coached multiple NFL players. And having from a coaching standpoint, coached with him, having as a watching him from afar way back when I started as a head coach at Saddlebrook High School, what he was doing when he first took over at Old Tappan. It's just been incredible, the rise of the program and then the sustainability of the program. So
Right.
not just the rise of where he's taken him to, but the ability to sustain it and be one of the top programs year in and year out in New Jersey. I don't know where he is on the wins list, but I looked at it like a year or two ago. He was really climbing fast towards. He might be in the top 10 in
10 wins a year helps.
Yeah, yes, right, in North Jersey. So maybe higher. So I could be wrong, but yeah. But I want to say this without even go as great as a football coach as he is, and he is a phenomenal football coach, no doubt Hall of Famer type of thing. Women's basketball, girls basketball, I guess you call it in high school. Girls basketball coach. He's been to the tournament of the champions, in the Final Four. He's coached so many college girl athletes. His team has won multiple state championships in girls basketball as well. So you could debate whether he is a better football coach or a better basketball coach. But without further ado, let's bring on Coach Dunn. Coach, what's going on?
Not much. What's going on?
Welcome, Coach. Welcome.
It's great to have you on. It really is. Your career has been unbelievable. In high school coaching and like I said, in two sports. I think you used to coach. Did you used to coach baseball too for?
Yeah, for a bunch of years. Yep.
A bunch of years you used to coach baseball as well.
Yep.
Just kind of go into depth, like from how you started in coaching and really, how you got to the point where you're at.
Well, I mean, I started right out of college, like just, everybody else. Like I played for a year in college at Providence when I was on the last football team at Providence College. They dumped the program after my freshman year. So that was I had a great experience there. I transitioned over, played rugby the next couple of years because we didn't have a football team, as opposed to like today, you'd probably transfer out and people didn't do that stuff.
Oh God, you'd be gone in 2 seconds.
Yeah. But so transitioned over and finished up. I played rugby and then, it was like a history major in college, but then got my teaching degree certificate while I was there. I figured I'll do it while I'm here. And, then got out and coached football like back at Old Tappan for my first year out of college and eventually got a teaching job at Passaic Valley. Then I went to Depascale Hills and taught and coached a couple of years there. Then I got a full-time teaching gig at Old Tappan and was back as an assistant there for 5 years, and then took over as the head coach in 2000 and been there ever since. So, had a lot of good teachers and coaches, like all of us, that kind of got into it, had good teachers and coaches that kind of influenced you and you kind of trying to figure out what to do. And you realize those people had big influence on you and you kind of followed in their footsteps. So that was it. That's how I kind of ended up at Old Tappan and been there ever since. Been a great run for me. Maybe not at the beginning, like all of us, we went through tough times but first couple of years weren't so hot and people trying to run you out and everything else. But
dodging bullets left and right.
Oh yeah. I went the pivotal moment, like starting off as the head coach, because I'd been there for 5 years as an assistant. You think, like all of us, we think we know everything. When you're 30 years old, you think you know everything. You're ready for the job. And we start off like first year, we go 0-6 to start off, and you're like, this is a little tougher than I thought. And then Then second year we're 2-8, finish up 2-8. And I remember like the season had ended. I'm going into coach girls hoops too, whatever. But we had like one of those half days in service days.
Right.
And Tom Cashel was the athletic director. God bless his soul. He's passed away, but Dave knows him. And great guy. And he was a long time AD. And he was new at the job. And he called, like, it's like one of those half days. And my wife would come in. We're going to go out to lunch in between. She had a half day too, whatever. And I just stopped in. I had to drop something off in the office. He goes, "Oh, you got to come in here." I remember saying, like, he just started to unload on me about the past season, how bad we were. And I could see he never talked to me like this, going nuts. And he's laying into me about, did you buy a box of cigars for the guy who does the announcing up in the press box for the games? I said, I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And I realized he was like under a lot of pressure, people coming after him. Like,
yeah, he was probably feeling the heat from.
Yeah. And I looked out the door. I told my wife, we're not having lunch. I got to stay in here for a while. And I remember him unloading on me. That was the first time I realized a lot of other things going on. I'm like, I got to worry about buying cigars for somebody. Like, what the hell is this, And, but it's like one of those wake up moments where you start growing up a little bit growing into the job and realizing how much more there is to it. And, all the other little things surrounding it. So, yeah, but since then I've had a great run. Place has been great. I live in the district. My kids went to school there and played for me. And Dave knows my son. And
that's amazing.
And so I've had a great run and great friends, great people there. So it's been a good deal for me.
I miss Thomas. He's the best.
Yeah, he might run back and he'll hear your voice. He might pop in and say hi.
Oh, that's awesome. You definitely tell him I said hello. Yeah. It's really been an amazing run, and obviously continues to be so. And I think one of the things that when I coached you, and obviously working with you even behind the scenes, from an analyst standpoint over the years, I always found like your intuition from a coaching standpoint, like you had an idea of where you were trying to go with it, but you like to get input as to, is there other directions I might be able to go? And I always thought that was a really great style of getting information from your assistants and figuring out like, okay, I'm thinking this way. Is there another way that you think maybe something should be done? And then you kind of take those pieces and put it back together with what you think might be the best way to do it. And then you put it on the field. I thought that was really, really a not just a unique style, because I've been around, a lot of guys, like I coached with Nymphius and but it really was a really interesting thought process of getting all the information and then figuring out what works for you as a coach and works for your team. Right. And I thought I always found it to really, really be fascinating. I tell people all the time, like, I've coached with, lucky I was with some great, I've been an assistant for Darren White. I've been an assistant for you, and I've been assistant for DJ Nymphius. Those are the three guys that I've been assistants for, obviously. And probably some of the winningest coaches. If you put all the wins together,
definitely 100%.
Yeah, and you take different things from each guy, but I always thought that was really, really an interesting way of how you and then you do it in such a calm manner, which is really like amazing. And the other thing I always say that I take away from you, and Derek knows this, because I was so fascinated by when I worked your camp in the summer, and I've worked a lot of camps. I've ran, as you know, thousands and thousands of camps, right? But I've also worked different people's camps. And you did this thing with prizes at the end of each day for kids, like for numerous kids. Like, and I would say it wasn't just like one kid. Like you in all these other camps, you see a couple of kids get a prize. Like you would have coaches come to you with each guy, and you might have 5, you might have 8 if you needed to, whatever you needed to satisfy for the day, right? And then you would have it at the end as well. And I said it was the most amazing thing, because I would say the way the kids would light up, and you give them the bro hug. It was just an amazing way you do it, and the kids loved it. And Derek could tell you, I probably take it that to the extreme. Like when I run my camp every summer, the kids walk away, and every parent talks about how the kids love it, because not only is it a fun camp and they learn and all the things that you would expect them to do, but they're walking away with gifts And I said he's a genius. It was the
We
most
definitely have
genius
adopted
thing.
that. That's for sure.
I said the man is a genius. That's an absolute genius move. And obviously it's genuine, but you see, you know what it is. You see how their faces light up, and then you also you would see, you know, if you did like one or two, like so many other kids disappointed. So you know, it becomes like, hey, let's get as many kids that deserve a prize each day getting a prize, and then that way, you know, more and more kids, and eventually you get around to each kid basically has an opportunity if they do a good job, you know, to earn something. So I always thought that was fascinating, and that has zero to do with the X's and O's.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's part of kind of your coaching style from my observation. What would you say is like, how do you approach developing play? Because you've done such a great job. You talked about how where you went from to you know, where you are now. What has been your approach to developing players and helping them to really continue to improve?
You know, well, the camp part, the funny part about that is like, I always thought like, if I look back, reflect back now, I'm like, I was probably meant more to be like a 4th and 5th grade teacher than a high school teacher. Like that week with those kids is my favorite week of the year. You know, like I love like 8, 9, 10-year-olds. They have like tons of energy. They can be redirected so quick. They have fun, whatever. But so that's like a great week. But the development part is, it goes back to that. Like, you guys would remember like years ago when I was growing up, and then early years of coaching, like before like the off season stuff was so intense as it is. You'd be hard pressed to get like kids who are freshmen and sophomores into the weight room, into the off-season program, showing up at like whatever captain's practices were, whatever. Like
that was always the struggle. You were always trying to pull those guys in because they just weren't that familiar with, you know, how we do things. And that was, I remember my first couple of years, it's like, hey, we got to make sure so-and-so's in the weight room, or grab this guy at lunch and have that conversation to make sure he's going or doing whatever. That was always tough.
Yeah, real tough. And I remember that when I was an assistant and then became a head coach, getting the younger guys in. You always have your core guys who are going to show up. Those are the easy guys. You don't have to, not that you don't have to coach them, you coach them, but those are the easy guys to get to buy in. It was always those younger guys. And I think as the off-season programs have developed so much, younger guys are a bigger part of it. Younger guys play more earlier now than they used to.
Do.
You know, so that's a bigger part of it. So I think that probably the biggest thing that we've done over the years is you don't wait till you think a kid's going to be important for you to start coaching them. Like you start coaching them when they walk in the door, even before that at these camps and everything else. Like you're coaching before that, developing relationships. And the number of kids, the thing I take a lot of pride in mostly is the number of kids that by the time they're seniors become productive high school football players, that when they walked in as freshmen, they were aliens, you know, like they would, you know. Like,
yes, they were. They're like Bambi out there, right? They're all dainty. They're you know, their shoe size just changing every other week. Mom's worried about like, why are these pants short? I just bought them. Like,
and not even able to get out of their own way, and kids that you wouldn't even presume to be an athlete, and eventually end up helping you out. And everybody's got those stories as coaches. We love those kids that end up being like that because they buy in. But I think that's the biggest part of developing them. Just start early and make sure they know. My favorite part of practice is like coaching the scout offense, you know, like when you get to work with the younger kids and they see that you're directly invested in them getting better and again, coaching them hard in it, you know, but also having fun with it too. And they see another part of your personality as opposed to always, you know, hitting the other kids hard, the older kids hard. They see you like teasing them a little bit, or you know, you make a joke.
I wouldn't say, I don't know if you want to say like loosen up, but they almost see you not have to always be that hammer that has to come down. You know, like you could still be a hammer, but maybe now you're a rubber mallet, right? Or something. You know what I mean? Like I always thought that when head coaches and all the guys, I've been fortunate enough to work for great guys, and you know, throughout my career going into my 15th season, when head coaches get involved, other than just like I'm the OC, I'm the DC, pointing fingers, like doing this or doing that, when head coaches get down and do the scout team, or, you know, they take a special team and they kind of run with it, you just see the kids play a different way or give a different, I don't know if it's I don't know if level of respect is the right thing, because as a head coach, you're always respected. It's just they see you more as like a human, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're not always have to be that dictator, that guy that's always like the only time you talk to him is when something's going wrong. Like that's not the way to do it, especially now with the kids, with the way kids are now.
Yeah. It's all those things along the way that you just let them see your real personality. And if we didn't have a, like you have, like you learn early, you got to be your own personality. We all try and emulate certain things, copy things, a copycat business. We're all looking for different ideas, ways, techniques, things to motivate kids and get kids to get better and improve and all that. But at the end of the day, you have to realize early on, you got to be your own personality, be your own person. And you also realize some people's personality aren't cut out to be football coaches or head football coaches or whatever the case is. Just not going to work out,
I think that's a great point. Like some guys just, you see guys that are great coordinators, or they're great at what they do, and all of a sudden now they go into a role as a head coach and it's not as successful as they are. Some guys I feel like, just aren't meant to be head coaches. Yeah. And you see it in the NFL. How many of these guys go from coordinator to head coach? 2-3 years later, it's like, maybe that's not right. And then they resurrect their career back being a coordinator. And it's like, sometimes guys, you really got to know yourself. And I love that you said that too, because ultimately, like as a coach, you have to be who you are. Otherwise you're faking something for 3 hours a day, trying to, be what you aren't. And that doesn't constitute success in any way, shape or form for anyone.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And yeah. And by the way, it goes the other way too. There are plenty of guys who are head coaches that weren't very good coordinators, or cut out, right. Or have to do that either.
100%.
It's just a role that you kind of fit into or whatever. So it's not saying one's better than the other or whatever. It's just different personalities, different mindsets, and the details and everything else that you kind of, your personality heads into. Now, you got to coach your personality. Also, you got to work into that. Like, it shouldn't limit your self-improvement. You can't be complacent. This is the way I do things, or this is how I do it, or this is who I am, or whatever.
This is my system. This is what we do, and this is how you're trying to fit what is it? You're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, or whatever it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you can't force feed it, and Dave knows it, because also the program that you're in, right, where you are, especially being public school, right? Like you need to know those types of kids and how things work, and that type of dynamic too, I think goes into it a lot. You need to know where you are, and you need to understand your kids. And obviously, it comes from the top. And you've been fortunate enough to work with some great administrators that have kind of allowed you to shape and mold your program into what it is today.
Yeah, good people. Mostly I've had great assistant coaches, and every coach who talks about that has great assistants, whatever. But I've had the same group of guys, and Dave knows these guys that are tremendous, and they're behind the scene guys. And we've been together a long time. And that goes to what Dave was saying. You can just you can hear everybody out. At the end, you got to go with what you're comfortable with, what you're able to coach the kids to do, like what in your mind you can get across and get them to do. But you have a lot of good voices and brains in the room, and people who know the kids and know what you're about also. So I've been fortunate in that respect. Yeah.
I think you do a wonderful job of integrating all those different things within the program. I mean, first of all, you have, like you said, you have tremendous assistants that have really worked with you, but what you do masterfully is mesh all those different personalities, right? And Joe Klaus is a big personality, right? As the defense, I mean, could be a head coach if he wanted to himself.
Sure.
He's a big personality. He's a guy that where am I losing my? Oh, there we go. And you have other guys that are like that. You got guys who played, a lot of guys that played in college, and you mesh all those personalities together to really work so well. And I think the way that you take care of the guys is really unique, and the bonding that you build, and you let them go. And what Joe said this to me when I came on board with you, to run the special teams. He's like, once Coach Dunn trusts that you can do the job, he'll let you run with it. And I can't remember which game it was, but it was It was one of the early games, and maybe it was Rampo, where we started returning. I think we returned a couple of kicks for like 88 yards or whatever it was. And after that point, I remember I was like, okay, he's just like, he's going to let me, he's letting me do what we want to do, what we think might be best. And it was real. I think it was really a tribute to how you are. Like, you're like, hey, once you show me that you can do the job, and it doesn't matter who you are. I was obviously a head coach before, right? Show me that you can do the job, and then you can go ahead and do what you need to do. And then you also did a great job, I always thought, of leveraging each person's knowledge base.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm curious about this, but basketball, obviously you had so much success. Football, you've had a lot of success. Like, what are some of the things that you felt like tie together from the two sports, and that you leverage, in each one of those sports to help you?
I mean, basketball is interesting. Like, the basketball is a lot easier to manage. Like, you can walk into practice a day after football ends or whatever.
It's crazy.
Years where we're crossing over and football's still going with basketball started, but you can walk
in. Which for you, coach, happens more than other coaches.
Well, it's a great problem to have. Yeah. But you can walk in the gym and you got a dozen basketballs and the nets are down and you can have practice and whatever. And you have 2 assistant coaches and the kids show up and you're ready to go. Football, there's so many more moving parts. So, which is the only reason I've been able to do it. Like, and I enjoy the part of like getting away from football a little bit and working, and I love hoops too. So it's a lot of fun. And what else do you do in the winter at night? Like, I mean, like,
right.
I'd be like going out of my mind. They're getting out of the weight room at 4:30. It's pitch black, like, what do you do the rest of the day?
Right.
So, but the combination too, it's the same as everything's working with kids, like that's all it is at the end of the day. And like I said, like I had those early on, crappy things that happen to young coaches, whatever, like between administrators and parents or whatever. And you realize like, I was never going to be one of those guys who's like trying to become a vice principal or a principal or an athletic director. I had no interest in dealing with adults. Like, anytime I'm dealing with adults, it's usually not good.
Right. No, it's totally understandable because the move always, right? If you look historically, the head football coach became either the AD or a principal or a vice principal or something of that nature. They went into a job rather a career where, they were the leader. They now lead the school, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the same way, coach. Like, I had no interest of leaving the classroom in any way, shape, or form because, ultimately you get into this because you want to have a positive effect on kids moving forward. That was the appeal for me. It wasn't having to deal with parents or board members or that type of thing, right? Like that was, if I had to, okay, but that wasn't the role that I wanted to play in any way. It was, I wanted to be on the front lines with the kids at practice, rolling balls out, doing drill, that type of thing. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that. And with social media now, the involvement of parents and that aspect and adults in general has just increased because what they see is what they think the reality is. And it gets so intertwined, right? Like you need to now manage that from, the leadership position and, that comes with the culture you build around your program. And, outside looking in, like that's handled for you, where now you can focus on, the X's and O's of it, the football piece of it, the part that you care about. But that also comes with time, right? Like you've had to build that to a point where this is the standard, and it's kind of cliche line now, right? Like this is the standard, and that's what we work for.
Yeah. There's no doubt you got it. Like, I feel for all these young guys getting into the business. Like it's brutal. Like it really is for young coaches to stay in it and to get a chance to be successful at it and to get a chance to learn enough to get through the rough patches. Like, and it was years, like probably 15 years ago. Like I just decided like, I'm not going to give a crap about anything. Like we all work with how many thousands of teenagers? Thousands. Every year I've got a new roster of 125 teenagers and another 100 I'm coaching or whatever. And for 33 years or whatever you're doing.
Just do the math there, right?
Yeah. And then you are forced to sit down, and this is nothing against parents, because some of my best friends are parents of former players I've had. Like, I have great relationships with a lot of people, but then you're forced to sit down and discuss like how to approach certain things with somebody who's, dealt with 2 to 3 teenagers their entire life. You know what I mean? Like, and you're 2 to 3,000. You understand what the kids are about and like, and you're the expert at it. So
that's
a
right.
while back, I decided I'm the expert at this. Like, I'll do it my way, whatever. Not that I don't want to get better and take advice and talk to people. I do, but you have to be grounded in what you believe is right and what you know is right. I mean, it's the only way to get through it. And for the most part, young kids coming into the profession, they don't get the leeway to get through those tough years, or they
don't even get the opportunities, right? They don't get that part where you struggle and grow. It's like, hey man, you went, your first year, like you said, you went 0 and, you go 0 and whatever. All right, well, maybe we'll give them another year. Next year you go 3 and whatever, and now all of a sudden, like, hey, you're gone. And it's like, I always say, like, you need at least that first freshman class to get through to kind of judge whether or not you're going in the right direction. And Dave knows this better than most of us. He's taken over programs that were like really down and struggling, and to build that stuff, and then he does it, takes care of business, and then it's like, okay, well, something happens, and now it's like you're gone. Like, where is that? And you see it all over, right? You see it at every level of football, whether it's high school, college football, the pros. Like, guys just don't get that time to really develop all of those things and kind of be successful.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, you might have, you tell me if you've dealt with this before, but like, I remember these first years, like, you're told you have to sit down and talk to like certain parents by the athletic director, work this out, work that out, discuss it. And I remember sitting there, I was, like I said, I'm always open to criticism. And coaches by nature, mostly football coaches, are very defensive a lot of times. I get it.
Extremely.
And there's a reason for it, but
we take a lot of bullets, like we do.
Yeah. And strong-willed guys and whatever. So we understand the type and but I consider myself like open to criticism and hearing whatever and ways to improve. But I remember sitting down, and it's like 2 separate meetings with different dads, and one was like the booster club guy, and the other was like just a parent who had insight into whose kid was a legit recruit, and so you're going to sit down and talk, and his insight about how we got to get better and what we got to do. And within like a year or two, the booster guy like disappeared with $10,000 out of the account and just disappeared, and the other guy was calling me for a job. Like he needed help, like getting a job, getting like umpiring freshman baseball games or something. And I'm just like, these are the friggin' guys I had to sit there and talk hours with and listen to their input on what I'm, you know what I mean? Like, what is going on? That's when I realized, like, I know what I'm talking about at this point.
Yep.
Like, but everybody's got to be able to get to that moment,
Absolutely. And obviously, I've been head coach. You've been fortunate to really be at, for the most part, one place, right?
Yeah.
I've been at multiple places, and my first one was at Saddlebrook, because I remember we did 7-on-7 with you and Nympheus over at Riverdale. It might have been like your first few years, I think, at Old Man. And
because early 2000s, that's when you had that.
Yep.
So I had the first year, it was a weird time period where I took it over because Darren White had done such a great job. Then he stepped down. There was all kinds of politics, and I can't do it justice. He could probably tell you exactly what was going on, but there was all kinds of politics, like basically. And he said, "I'm done with this," and stepped down. Decided to just coach softball, which, by the way, he's obviously done a bang of job on. He's become the great, maybe the greatest softball coach in Bergen County.
It is amazing.
Yeah. But so he stepped down, and then Coach Linari took it over with some of the guys who were assistants under Darren White. We were all together originally, and he got fed up after the first year, and he just left. And I think he's at St. Joe's, been there forever. And he was a fantastic line coach, John Linari. And so then I came in, So I kind of knew, because I'm an alma mater there, kind of knew, what was going on, but I didn't know like the ins and the outs. Obviously, my father's a teacher there, runs a track program. So I took it over, and I actually thought we were doing great. Like we went 2-8 the first year, but we played tough. We had all sophomores, stud sophomore class. And I had a parent that was just relentless pain in the butt, just relentless. And then the next year, the kid didn't want to do the workouts in the summer with us. Now I was young, like when you took over, I was 30 years old, 31. And my whole thing was like, hey man, like you got to be in the weight. If you're the quarterback, you got to be in the weight room. Like if you're one of the leaders of the team. So I went kind of a different route with my guys. And this kid was played the year before, and their parents just were relentless. And they pulled me into the office, and they're like, da, da, da. And this kid would send me texts, and this kid should have been off the team. I tried to get rid of him. They wouldn't. The administrators wouldn't let me get rid of him. And the team was, all through this, the team was making progress. We actually went 5-5, and we had the whole team back the next year. I mean, literally, I had this kid Justin Maneri, who was like 6'8", tight end. I had Steve Boharnis was the quarterback who went to play at Rutgers. He ran for like 1,300 yards from quarterback. Yeah. And obviously, as a guy who's run your quarterback a lot, you know how valuable that could be, right? So, but they were it was relentless. And I basically, they came to me and they said, listen, you can, we're not going to let you coach winter track with your father this year. And then they said, you have to reapply for your job, and you probably get it. But it's crazy. They do this sometimes to coaches who, you're probably going to get voted in, but we want to let people talk about it.
You just saw it in Brunswick, right? One of the Brunswicks just did it to a guy.
So here's what I did. I said, I ain't doing any of that shit. I'm out of here. So, so we're there at our banquet, and no one really knew that I was out of there. Like I basically told my father, I told the AD I'm out of there, and I'm at the banquet, and all the parents, they must have heard whispers, but they're like, you're coming back, right? Because we had this great group of kids coming back. And I said, yeah, we'll see. I walked out that door. I never set foot ever in the Saddlebrook High School again. So I've never set foot in that school again since. And it was an interesting thing because we had all the things, and I always thought that at the time, I was a young coach. That's why you talk about it. And even back then, like when Cashel brought you in and talked to you, like they brought me in, read the riot act, and they're basically like, you gotta work with this kid. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'll go find another place to coach. And that's when I joined Nympheus' staff that year, and we won the state championship. And that was a great team. He had a lot of great coaches on the staff there, and he did a great job. And then awesome. And then I went to Powell Park after and built that up for from nothing. But it was so interesting how the ability for people like you said who really don't know exactly what's going on with your team that could actually ruin it. A good thing. Yeah. And that team should have been. There was no doubt in my mind that team, if I had been able to stay there, it was nothing against the guy who took over after me. He just didn't know the kids, and he only lasted 1 year himself. And it's
kind of a staple for Saddlebrook. There's a lot of 1 year wonders.
Well, other
than Leo, who was there forever.
Leo did a great job. Leo was my assistant. I brought him on, like he was right out of college. He was my assistant, and I said, you stay on here, you'll be the head coach here because you're probably the right guy. He was good at that. Well, you know what he was good at? He wasn't a coordinator. He wasn't he coordinated stuff, but that wasn't.
He's a manager. He's a great manager of that.
He was a great manager. He really knew how to manage.
Right? Like group one is different. Like there's a lot of moving pieces with group one, and that
Well, I could never be that. I could never be anytime I've been a head coach, I feel like it's high school. Like I got to coordinate a side of the ball. Like I have to have my stamp in there. I just more comfortable that way. I know you are too. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm gonna go under, if I'm going to go under, like it's in high school. But I always told Leo this, I said, I give you credit. Like, you really CEO'd it. And, he does the same thing with the Bergen County. He does a great job. Yeah. He CEO'd it and did a fantastic job for a long time until someone got on his nerves there and he decided to move on himself. But that's a unique place. But you're right. Like, I think that's the hard thing for young coaches. Luckily, I got a second opportunity and it worked out. But not a lot of them do decide to take a second opportunity in today's world. And I think
that's just not worth it, right? Like, financially, if you're not a teacher, and even now, teachers always had second jobs, right? Like, that was part of it because, like you said, Coach, in the summer, it was captain's practice. I can't see you till August 1st, right? Like, weight room stuff. Like, the game has changed. Maybe not the game. Well, that game has changed. That's a whole other conversation.
Everything around it has changed.
Everything. You are now expected to basically work for free that entire winter, spring, summer. Because if you're not doing what everybody else is doing in terms of, getting kids recruited or, helping kids do this.
Like, so Derek, there's a few places that are, I think, are different from that standpoint. Like, when I was at Indian Hills, if we didn't move, like, I believe I'd still be there because of the fact that, but we moved down the shore, when my kid was, getting to be 2 years old, we had to get a house, so it became a thing where, I think certain schools, and I don't know how exactly, but they do a good job. Like Indian Hills, man, they gave me multiple stipends.
Right.
They made it real stable.
And especially for guys like coaches other sports, right? Like,
they made it real. They made it real stable for you. If I wanted to coach other sports, like Barada, who is now your AD, right? Yeah. I thought he was phenomenal with that. Yeah. Like,
was that your guy at Indian Hills?
Mine? Yeah, it's the same that Dunn has now. Yeah.
Because you loved him.
Yeah.
I thought he was great. I felt horrible when I took the RBR job because it looked like, because the team was pretty decent and we were still building, and it looked like, he jumped ship for like a better job. But it was really we moved down here and it was 10 minutes from my house versus an hour and 20-minute ride to go to Indian Hills,
every day.
Originally I lived there, but we moved. So, but Barada was I thought was phenomenal. He handled it, at least with me, obviously everybody's different. With me, he handled some of the issues that you deal with parents, where you're around in a wealthier community, like things you have to deal with that, like some of the stuff you talked about. He used to handle that so great for me. Like, he was a buffer when necessary. And I'll tell you this, he also, if I was wrong on something, he brought me in and he would be like, hey man, like, you're wrong on this. This is not an area that you need to go down, bite the bullet, go down a different path. I respected that about him. We had that. My first AD at RBR was exactly like that. Then obviously he retired after the first year. He was a fantastic guy, but he retired after the first year, and then everything changed because it was COVID, and it just became.
It was wild.
Yeah, and I was definitely, and Derek was with me, so I was definitely not fond of some of the nonsense protocols that we had, which made it probably, which made it probably harder for me personally, because I thought some of the things were like, how they gave you rules in COVID, and then all of a sudden, some people would decide there should be more rules than the rules they already gave us. Yeah. That's what was going on at RBR, and my AD was no longer there. So it was just like, I'm like, we're in a fight every day about all these different things. And I understood obviously how serious COVID could be, but there was like, hey man, if we're going to play football where they're actually going to hit each other and breathe on each other and, be on top of each other. And then the second we walk away, like, trainers screaming at me, like, get them separated. I'm like, we're just laying on each other.
Yeah. Then you come together in a team huddle and everybody's got to be masked or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's whatever.
Pods of 10.
It was a crazy time. And now, if you saw the Olympics, the guy who won the 100, He actually got I thought it was so interesting.
He got COVID. He's done. He's home. He left. He had to go home.
No. He ran into 200. He was walking around with a mask.
I think he pulled out of the relays.
Just because he wasn't feeling good anymore. He really wasn't feeling good. But he was walking around with a mask for a couple of days. He had gotten COVID right after the 100. I don't know when he actually got it, but like he felt terrible the next day. I saw the interview, and they asked him, "Did you ever think of pulling out?" Now, obviously, a few years ago, they would have made you be gone.
They would have forced you.
He said no. He said, "I was running that race no matter what." And
just
even so, he
4
finished
years
third.
For it.
Yeah, he said, I was running that race no matter what. So he ran the race, and then obviously he still wasn't feeling great. So he, I mean, it'd be great to be so good at the sprinting that you can still get a bronze medal with COVID, I guess. That's awesome. So good,
Now, but Coach, your previous AD that passed away, what was his name?
Tom Cashel.
Yeah, my father has some relationship where he knew him or some way. Was he was he a William Patterson guy or something? Maybe
Tom was a Rutgers Newark guy. He coached baseball at Rutgers Newark, and then he was my baseball coach in high school.
Oh wow!
And then and then he became the AD. He was the guy who hired me as the football coach. I was there before him as an assistant, but he
was he at places? Was he like an AD somewhere else or along the lines?
No, he was a teacher at Demrest Middle School way back in the 80s, and then went to Rutgers Newark as the baseball coach, and he was like assistant AD there. And then he came back and got the job at Tappan.
Yeah, so I don't know how it is. And Dave knows my father. He knows everybody, just like his dad. They all know everybody. But he had some relationship and always would say like even when we played you in 2017, right, in the finals, my old man was like, oh, this. And I'm like, all right, well, so he was like, he always just spoke volumes about him.
Yeah, he was a great guy and passed too soon, obviously. Yeah. But he's a wonderful guy. Yep, for sure.
When you were originally a wing T guy, right?
Yeah, way back. Yep.
So I thought what is fascinating about what you did, and I think I'll let you tell the story, but when Devin Fuller came around, right? You kind of went to the gun and went more to that like spread wing T, which is similar to what you're running now to this day.
That was my first year coaching.
Talk about that.
How's that
transition for you? Like, how did you come up? Because really, I mean, to this day, like I don't see a ton of guys marry it the way that you marry it. That those wing T principles, with the gun. I mean, there are other places maybe around the country that do, but as far as in New Jersey, talk about how that evolution of that system when you got Fuller, and then how you continue to evolve that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know wing T, like you're not really highlighting your quarterback all that much. And when he came in, he was starting as a freshman. At that point, he's like any other freshman. He's not ready to be who he ended up being. Right. So we're still kind of wing T based and under center. And as he became a sophomore, and you could see this he's not just a good kid who's going to be like a starter as a freshman, whatever, and be a real good high school football player. He's next level, Right. And he wasn't quite there as a sophomore, but you could see he's getting. And that's when we started, kind of merging some shotgun concepts where the spread was becoming the whole big thing and everything. Everybody's running that. So, and merging those concepts a little bit, but you also. One of the things is like, are we going to be in this full time and that's what we're doing, being a spread team? Or are we going to? And the idea was, let's stick to what we're good at up front, and the blocking principles and everything else, and how to manage the blocking schemes and the rule based stuff that the wing T is so good about, and and marry that into the backfield action out of the shotgun and kind of the concepts there. So. That's how it kind of emerged, and obviously having that kid do it makes you look a whole lot better.
He was a stud, coach. Like I was saying, I think it was either my first or second season at Passaic Valley, and we had to go up, and I was fortunate enough to work with Billy Johnson, who's just an absolute phenomenal defensive coordinator. And he, it was like, hey, Derek, like you're a young coach, like let me explain to you how you prepare for a kid that's this dynamic, because he had coached when he was the head coach there. He coached against the Greg Olson and all those guys and stuff like that. And then it was really kind of a new type of offense to really kind of defend. Not many people were doing that stuff with a quarterback being such a big factor. Not to mention that this kid could literally do everything with it and was still like developing, right? It was like, all right, we're going to shut down we're going to shut him down as a runner. And then he just dropped one over the top, or, hey, and it wasn't like he was the only guy. Like, and that's another thing that I think you have done, like with your program. Like, there's always a guy, but there's other guys around every time your teams are successful. Like, you can't just focus in on one guy, because that guy's going to kill you. That guy's going to kill you. I think you do a great job of allowing those other guys to become dudes, right? Like within the system. Whereas all of these kids now factor into it. Yes, you have a focal point of like, hey, that's the guy. Because every year you just turn out a running back. Like, it's like, holy hell, like every time. But it's also those other guys that kind of factor into it. And I feel like he was like, you really kind of opened eyes to a lot of other teams. Like, hey, this kid can do this, but like you guys can do it with your guys as well.
Yeah. I think he was, obviously a special player, but it became the whole. I think the things that we were doing at the time, like incorporating that jet motion out of like
that was huge. That was so big.
Running the counter schemes off the jet motion, and some and the different types of stuff like that. I mean, I thought that was like, it was a big part of what we were doing, and we still use a lot of it today. I mean,
I use a version of it at with my son's youth team, and it's funny because last year we were running primarily jet, because they all had to be like at when they were 8, they all had to be in the box, like everybody had to be in a box, But we were using it with like 2 wings and using those guys. It was great, and so now they're 9, and you're allowed to play regular football. So we kind of expanded it for them, and we literally were running the buck sweep from gun, and I learned that from you, because listen, I was like originally like a spread zone read guy, and all those kind of like with the Mike Leach principles, and so I learned that, and it's amazing. I told Derek this. I said, I have 3. My son's is a quarterback. I have 2 other quarterbacks. I have 3 quarterbacks on my roster that are like, for their age, unbelievable. They're all different types. I have to figure out how to get all the guys time, but they're unbelievable. Unbelievable for 9 years old. Like, my son could do both. Like, he's like a guy that can run and throw. I have a guy that's like more of a runner, but like he's adequate, a great runner though. And then I have another kid that's more of like just like a gunslinger.
Yeah,
it's amazing. But those principles, like, what's so great about it is that it makes you multiple without having to teach a whole lot.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
was the thing that I like. You're able to run you're able to run the quarterback without changing a lot of verbiage. You're able to, do a lot of things from that standpoint. And Derek, the thing, and I want you to talk about this, because I don't know if this has always been, because from on the wing tee, I'm not sure which guy that would be, the old wing tee, but your utilization of the sniffer is second.
Coach talks about this all the time, bro.
Not, I guess you would call it an H-back now, an H-back, but that sniffer H-back is as important as the QB and the running back are, right? Those are kind of what most people know was the focal points. It's that sniffer guy that really gives you. He's a weapon, because he can do, basically he's like your jack of all trades. He can block.
Yeah, he does all your dirty work.
He can run.
Yeah.
Talk about how you started, like how you evolved that part of the game. Was that there right away when you had Devin, or
No, so that was the old wing tee stuff that we used to do. And the one thing about wing tee, you had a right and left halfback, and then we got away from that because you didn't have 3 good running backs on your team. 2 halfbacks and a fullback, obviously, with
right, that was tough.
Fullback. Yeah. So you always had one who was a better blocker, one was a better runner, whatever. So you went to like one became the wing back, one became the half back, you know, out of your red and blue sets or the double wing sets or whatever with the split. So we had like a, you know, depending on your personnel, you have like a wing back and then a half back. One guy was, and they would flip sides instead of being like Ridgewood always did a very consistent. They had a right and a left half back, which I always admire. I'm like, and how guys, and they would not tip off stuff as much, but when you switch it, guys, you tip off some plays. So then as we got into more like, all right, let's take the split side halfback and let's move them out into a slot. And now you've got that wing sitting there. And that's a pain in the ass to defend, like when you've got the tight end wing on one side and then a twin set on the other.
Yeah, that single width set we used to call it in college. Yeah. It was like, hey, or like a nub tight end, like that's tough because now you're just talking about matchups. Like you want to run that way, you know, you got a 130-pound corner or whatever trying to make a tackle on a guy who's, you know, a better runner and a bigger body.
Yeah, and like Dave said, you run the buck sweep out of that now to your fullback, whatever, or your quarterback runs it out of like counter motion, whatever, stab fakes, and, you know, and you can run the buck sweep, and they got to be sound on the one side, or you just throw perimeter screens on the other. But then we started taking the wing and moving them over, making it into a trip set, and kind of creating some conflicts there. And now it's evolved where we try and put like. I don't know that we used to get tight ends, like good tight ends, because they're like 6'2", 210, 215, who could down block and be another lineman in there and then get out and catch a pass. We haven't been able to get those types of kids too much, like those kids who could really be.
Those kids just aren't developed like that, Coach. Like nobody comes up now saying, I want to be a fullback, I want to be an H-back, right? Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm a wide out. And even the tight end world, right? Yeah. Like, do I really want to be a tight end? And most, you know, sometimes those guys are just like, I'll flip to the other side of the ball, right? Yeah. And I'll stay that. And, you know, you just don't see, I guess, development, I guess, of like hey, dude, you're going to be this is going to be your role as an H-back or that position. I don't know if guys get developed because I don't know how many people really utilize it, right? Like, I think you see it more now because obviously, you know, Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs or you look at, you know, San Francisco with Shannon, like those guys use, you know, those athletic H-back, whatever, like in that role. So I think you see guys trying to, but I just don't think the position is like high school guys don't come up saying, hey, I'm going to be a fullback, I'm going to be an H-back.
Yeah, well, it's a great position because
phenomenal position. Yeah,
because you can put, depending on what your type of kid you put there, you put there's nobody has those old school fullbacks with the neck rolls anymore. But we have a lot of those kids are not going to be your number one running back, but they're not quite a tight end either or a fullback, but they can be like a kid who can go catch a pass, and then you put him in there and mix him in. He can run some routes, and he'll be physical enough to get in and block somebody, and
he can catch a screen here or there. You know what I mean? Do some of that stuff. Like, I always thought it was like thought it would be the greatest position ever, right? Like, dude, you're telling me I get to down block or I get to pull and hit somebody, and then I get to go catch a pass and do this, and then maybe I even get a play off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a great position to do. You can kind of have a longer career, but I think guys are not as innovative with what you've done with it. And Dave and I talk about it, like we always have, like, even from a defensive perspective, damn man, like, hey, personnel wise, like, hey, you know, he's on the field here, like now we got to figure out where's he going, what's he doing this. It allows you to be so multiple without having to pull guys off or really kind of even show it personnel wise.
Yeah. So, and you can put a kid in there who's not a killer, who can now, like, because of your RPOs and everything else, he's never really blocking a defensive end or anything else. Like, you're reading these guys a lot. He's arcing out to the block in the alley or whatever. So then they get that. You can put a quick little kid up in the seam on that. It's a tough matchup. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. It's really, really an interesting position how he's able to utilize him in the blocking and the passing game. He's really lethal because
I love it.
Well, they forget about him, you know, so that's
also, he's probably more athletic than the guy that's trying to cover his ass, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he probably can run around better than the linebacker, or what are you going to put on him now? You know what I mean? Like, now we see defenses all over the place with the tweeners, the rovers, you know what I mean? Like, this guy can play DN, but he can take his hand up and play linebacker, or he can come down and play safety, but he can't do that. Like, it creates a matchup problem.
It's always a conflict defender over him, who's a guy who's got to stick his nose in the box or end up trying to carry him vertical. I mean, it's a pain in the neck. I mean,
And a lot of guys don't know how to handle it. Like, and now you're saying you're sitting there and you're spending the whole week trying to have to, what do I got to do? How do I defend this? And then it's like, all right, we just flip it and go somewhere else. And, now you just wasted your entire week preparing for something that you saw 4 plays out of.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about it. No, it's you've done a great job with that.
We've used it, Dave. We've used it everywhere we've been and utilized it like to an utmost. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, hell.
I got it from Coach Dunn. I didn't invent anything. I deletely didn't invent it.
That's what it is. This is where copycat people. Like, hey, that worked for him. How do I do it with my guys?
Without giving away the play names, I right down to the name of the plays. I basically took it and it was like, okay, that's definitely going in. Definitely going in. I was running at the end. I was actually running I was never a buck. I was actually running buck sweep with my guys because I was like, you know what? Like, I had those kind of kids, and I'm gonna run buck sweep. I had a quarterback that was a load, so he would run it for him, and I mean, I think that's the cool thing about from what I've noticed from what you run and the and a lot of guys that I don't know if a lot of guys are doing it like this, but like I saw you do, and it just clicked to me, is the fact that blocking scheme can work for the fullback and the quarterback equally. Yeah. And it gives you, you get a natural counter without having to the old days we would, okay, this was con power, this is power, this is ISO, this is you're running those things, but without the kids having to really think about each different thing as a new blocking scheme. That was always the hardest part about it. That was the thing I thought was so great about the wing tee is just like, hey man, I'm just exchanging the guy that's carrying the ball, like this guy's carrying the ball versus this guy, and we're doing a fake off of it. And you know what? You're going to have to respect this guy because he's such a good runner. My fullback's such a good runner, and or my quarterback's a really good runner. And those guys are always carrying out fakes when they're not having the ball. So you have to split your defense basically, unless you really are that good at reading. And most high school kids are not great at reading. Most linebackers are see ball, get ball, right, in high school. And, the better programs teach it obviously a lot better than that. They teach the reads well. But for a lot of high school coaches, that's a hard thing for them to do. And either they don't have the experience with it, they don't have a guy that can teach linebackers from that standpoint. And you really take advantage of that because you get linebackers going in all different directions, just like the original wing tee did. And you get guys going in different directions. And now, instead of having 3 linebackers running the ball, maybe you only have 1 or 2 running the ball, and we can block those guys. And now we have a chance for a good play each time. I think that's such a and that was the learning part of the wing tee. I wonder if you do you go to any clinics to try and continue to evolve the system that you're running over time? Or
always when there's stuff relevant, you want to keep up and follow up on things and see what the new developments are. I think the biggest thing is it's offensive football is offensive football at the end of the day. Like the wing tee stuff that we did and now keep doing, we've just meshed it with a lot of spread concepts. It's still the concept's still you're looking for angles. You're looking for blocking angles. You're looking for number advantages, and you're looking for grass. That's it's still the same thing. So we just kind of taken those spread concepts and put it into wing tee ideas. You know what I mean? So yeah, you always
RPOs are phenomenal. The RPOs you run.
Yeah. So those are always great to keep up on. Those are fun to run. I mean, and
especially with a guy like Fuller.
Yeah. And but we actually do.
The last few guys have been great with it. Yeah.
Or his brother, right? His brother was just as freaking good. The two of them were studs. Yeah. But then I look at
McInerney might have been the best of all, right? McInerney. I remember I was there when McInerney was the backup, right?
I remember you saying
who was it? Bilali was Bilali the Bilali was the Q who could sling it, sling it. But McInerney was like really, really smart, like, and really fast, but he wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
You know, I remember you would press Bilali with McInerney because he was knew he was going to be really good, but like, and then all of a sudden when he became the guy, oh my God.
Yeah. I remember this. It was like preseason or something, and I was unloading. It's funny. I was watching something with Nick Saban. You're talking about like following. He was just talking about how he coaches quarterbacks, and he's like,
yeah. It was on the new Hard Knocks.
Was it? Yeah. I think I saw the
I thought it was
Twitter
incredible. That guy played for him. The new head coach of the Bears played for Saban when Saban was at Toledo.
Yeah. I guess I saw it on
that
Twitter
relationship. It was. I think that stuff. I love that stuff. Not to interrupt you, Coach, but that's where it was, because he went on this whole thing about. He said, like, I always stood behind the quarterbacks, right? I wanted to hear what they're talking to the OC, like, what do you see, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Coach, good. Yeah,
I heard all the same stuff, but the thing that pissed me off is he's like, I never criticize a quarterback in front of the team or whatever, and I'm like, screw that. Like, like that dude's got to know he's accountable just like everybody else. Like, I don't want a prima donna back there. I don't want a kid who thinks like he's on a different level, and I want a kid who can handle like getting his ass ripped. And then when the heat comes in a game, all the other kids know he's been through it. He can handle it. He's had it tougher than this, whatever. So it's just different ways that personality, again, your own personality, how you coach it. But I remember Dave saying, I was in one of those tirades, like ripping through like 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks. And McNerney comes, it might've been a 7-on-7. And McNerney comes in, throws a couple, and Dave goes, that's going to be your guy right there. And Dave wasn't wrong. The kid had a senior year where he threw like 24 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And he's smart, but he says to this day, because I still see him, like, he lives around the corner from me. So he'll come to practices and he comes and throws a little bit for the young kids, whatever, after he gets off work. He's a great kid, but he goes, I don't know if I was smart. He goes, I just did exactly what you said, and that was it. I said, all right, I'm that good, man. You just got to listen. And he tells the kids, they could just listen to coach. Like, it'll be open. Just listen,
That's true. It was funny because Bilali was really like an improviser. Like, he would like buy time. You see it now, like, actually, it's kind of in vogue now, right? With Mahomes and
slinger.
And USC, like, those guys all buy time. But he used to. I remember he used to drive us all nuts. I'm like, oh my God, he's running around back there. And then all of a sudden he like fire it. Like the game against Sparta, he happened to have like,
oh my gosh,
greatest game. I mean, the right time to have the greatest game of his life.
Yeah.
He had an unbelievable threw for like, I think 300 yards or something.
Yeah.
And we came back to beat Sparta, but it was amazing because they were the team that really was like, the gunslinging team. And we out gunslinged them that day because Bilali
Frank throws it around like crazy.
Yeah.
He was on fire. I mean, he was on. But I remember, like, I was like, McInerney, like, you're right. Like, you would tell him to do things, and this kid would just do it. And even though he was not quite there yet, because he wasn't big, he wasn't big.
He's still young. Yeah, he's a late bloomer. Yeah,
he wasn't that big. But I'll tell you the one other funny thing, which you don't know. When we won the a couple years, we won the state group championship at Rutgers.
Yeah.
And so I come out of there and I'm walking up to the parking lot where I park, and I'm walking up there, and all of a sudden I see all of those guys. I don't know if when you got to the parking lot they were still there or not, because I left earlier than you did, and these guys were all, and they just jumped on top of me. And I said, they said, I didn't know that you were. I said, listen, I was only at this game. I was not a part. Like, I just helped behind the scenes a little bit, But they were so excited. I thought that was, to me, I was like, you know what? Like, that's what Old Tappan football is. Those guys wanted to come and see what your program was doing, down the line, and they stay connected to it. I think that's like the greatest thing that, I mean, of all the things that you've done is wins and losses and how many kids you send to college, like that, those alumni, I won't say what beverages they might've been drinking, but those alumni were coming back and they wanted to see the game. I mean, and literally they, as excited obviously as you were, they were so excited. They just wanted to see guys they knew because they wanted to talk about it. And it was I mean, they're funny, those kids, because they're like, Coach, you remember me? I'm like, I always find it funny when players think like you won't remember them,
Yeah, like what do they think we do? We just like etch a sketch it, and they're like, Don, like every one of the, I can remember kids from, you know what I mean? And I always like that. Like that's when you get that email or you get that text or whatever message through social media where it's a kid you've coached like 10 years ago, and he's like, Coach, I just, I'm a state trooper now, and I just want to thank you, whatever, or I'm having a baby, and, or just the random ones, right? Like, Coach, remember the day that you said, or you did this, and you took the kid's helmet, and you took all this stuff out of it, and you were like, fix it, because you got to know how to do your helmet or something. Like, that's the, like the reward from coaching that people don't understand, right? Like that's like, why do you do that? Why do you spend so much time with these kids? Why do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's why, because now, like, you look at it and it's like, dude, I remember when like you couldn't even walk right. Like you couldn't chew gum and walk. And then, now you're like a positive member of society. Right. Yeah. And it's like, Coach, you had something to do with that. That's just a great, like, I love that. That's my favorite part of this whole thing.
That's the best.
And it's why I continue to do what I do, right? And especially for you, Coach, where you've been in the same spot for a really long time. Like, you get to kind of see the whole, like, I'm sure you're like maybe at a level now where you're coaching kids of kids you coached, right? Or something of that nature. Like, that's a big eye opener. Like, oh my goodness, like that's wild.
I've been blessed. I live a mile from the school, and like I said, my kids went there, grew up there. Like, I've been blessed. It's a great place, but you get those messages. The funniest part about this, and you guys would know this, like when the kids come back and tell you stories of stuff you did, and it's like such a huge thing for them. For you, it's like a throwaway line at some point, like you didn't even, kids
right, they remember those things.
Like, Coach, remember the day I didn't have sneakers because we were going inside and you lent me your sneakers? Like, I'll never forget that. And I'm like, I lent you my sneakers. You know what I mean? It's like something that you said.
Back.
Yeah. Or like, hey, Coach, you told me I should do this, and I did it, right? Like, you told me to break up with her, and I did. Yeah. Best move of my life. Like, crazy stuff.
There's so many of those that you just like, and you'll kind of vaguely remember that kind of stick to kids. And it's good to hear those things because then you remember the words matter. Like,
they matter.
And that's a huge part of everything we do. Like, it's more important than any of the X's and O's in the football. It's like the words matter, 100%. What you say and how you say it, and how you make them feel.
Especially in this world, right?
I think your kids, one of the biggest tributes too is your kids have taken on a piece of your personality. Like
they are, man.
Like and the really good coaches. That's what I've seen. Like your kids take on a piece of your personality. Like what was
good, bad, or indifferent? Like
when I was there, the fullback you had the fullback who is great. He was great. I think he went to Lafayette. Slater.
Yeah.
So Slater. So and Slater was a great player. Actually, when we lost to DJ, that was the most heartbreaking thing of the whole thing. Was he was a phenomenal player. That was such a heartbreak. I felt heartbreak not because we lost as much. I mean, obviously, but I felt it for him because he was so phenomenal. Like he was such a phenomenal player. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, such a phenomenal player. Like he knew he was scoring the touchdown. That was the game. And he would never, ever, 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 that would never happen 999 times out of 1,000 and happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I thought he was one of those guys that he took on like a piece of your personality, how he, when because I was coaching the running backs. And he would just give me like certain looks and stuff. I'm like, do you hang out with Coach Dunn's office? Like, why are you giving? Like, when he gives me that look, he's the head coach. Okay, why are you giving that look? I'm like, will you just go in and just block the guy you're supposed to block? For God's sakes. But he would, and I was like, oh wow, like kids take on, and it was a good thing. Like he was a determined competitor. Obviously, that he's one of those kids that's going to be just He already is probably great, great citizen and very successful in everything he does. Yeah. But
he went up and finished his 5th year at Syracuse.
Oh, he did. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he played some special teams for him. Yep. And that COVID year, so he went up and finished up there and
smart.
Went to the communication school. He's doing he does all he has his own Nets podcast, and he does a lot of stuff involved with that, and he's big into NBA stuff. So he's
really?
He
was. You have so many smart kids, and I'll tell you this: one of the things that you've also done a really great job of, and I coached it too. When I was at Powell Park, Leonia, we had a large Korean population, and I was able to get some of the guys out, and just like you have, but there was a large percentage of them that never played football, and just it wasn't their culture, right? Yeah. So, people were like, "Oh, you're a Group 3 school because we're combined," and I was like, "Well, the one school, I really have, about half the school, or maybe even less, a third of the school to choose from, other than a few of the kids that I see walking the halls that are big that I could convince their parents." It wasn't really them, because they would be like, "Oh, I'll try it." But the parents had a thing with education and what they wanted them to do, and they were very good students. And they didn't want to usually it was the bigger. I would get Lyman out when I was, that's the other thing that's really, really amazing. People don't realize that about Old Tappan, that there are some kids that just culturally will never play football. So you're actually working with less of a population, boys wise, to choose from. Even though I'm sure you get, you have over the years gotten some kids to come out, but that's an amazing. I used to have I would see kids in the hallways that someone would tell me, "Oh, this kid jumps pretty well," and he played. I can't remember. A lot of the kids that were Korean played basketball and stuff. I'm like, "Listen, you're a great basketball player. You got to come out. You got to come out." And they're like, "I just play basketball, coach. I just play basketball."
Yeah. Demographics are interesting. Everybody deals with it, though. Public schools, everybody's got some kind of issue, whatever.
Oh yeah.
We don't. We always have mid-40s, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, mid-40s. It's always the same number. It never varies at all. No matter how many games you win, lose, whatever the thing is, it's always that number. It has been for 20 years. I don't know what the deal is, but we'd like to have more kids. But the kids we have, I like the mid-40s number, because every kid's getting coached every day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And all of them end up by the end are functional as football players,
100%. And you're Group 3, right, Coach?
Yeah.
And are you big Group 3, small Group 3?
We're right in the middle.
And you've been Group 3 for a while now.
We were Group 4 a couple years back. In 2015, we were Group 4.
Right, because when I played you in 2017 in the finals, you were a 4.
Oh, that was 4. Yeah.
But before that, when I was playing you, when I was coaching at Passaic Valley, I believe you were a 3, because I was there. Oh, hell, my first couple years. So that was 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
So we're going back. Yeah. Because those were the original Fuller years or whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, and I was every year, it kind of changes in the demographics and the things of that nature. You're a 3, you're a 4, you're a 5 to a 4. I mean, look, if you go historically, when I was growing up, I went to Butler High School, right? But Vernon was one of the biggest schools in the state.
Yeah.
And now you look at them, and they're barely a Group 2. It's just the demographics have changed. I don't know about Bergen County has kind of stayed a little bit when you but when you get down to lower end Bergen County, the Saddlebrooks and the things of that nature, those guys are just hoping to get 30, and then we'll just go from there. So you've been fortunate to, listen, you might have 40, but it's a solid 40, right?
Oh, it's solid 40.
Those guys can all play.
What about do you have your brother's the head track coach? I'm assuming he's still the head track coach, right?
Yep.
And obviously you coach girls basketball. Talk about the multiple sports thing within your school. Is that something that a lot of your kids are playing, or do you have a mix of that? How is that?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm a big fan of obviously playing sports and competing. Whatever small set, listen, weight room training is what it is. You can get I tell the kids in the winter and the spring, you got to put 4 hours a week into football. Is literally what it is. You can do more. but you can't do too much more. I mean, at the end of the day, like, how much are you training? Like, and if you can't play another sport and find 3 hours to train with the team or set up a program where you can, I mean, then you're cheating yourself. Like, go out and compete, like do something. You need kids to be coached by different people. You need them to make different set of friends, hang out with different people, use different parts of their body, different whatever. But, you know, we all wanted to play. Like, you know, I want to be doing stuff. I don't want to be sitting around like, you know, training is one part, but like, you know, so we push them all to compete. Sometimes kids give up. Like the one thing we've had is kids will come in as freshmen and think like they're coming in as they're going to be a basketball player, like you were talking about, and they come out for football and realize like after 2 years, like, you know, I'm 5'10" and I'm an okay high school football player, but I could be a great high school basketball player, but I'm playing really well as a corner or really well as like a safety, and I'm pretty good slot receiver or whatever. And, you know, and kids all of a sudden will develop and push more towards football. But our kids are big on, like, almost all our kids are doing at least track and football, wrestling. We get a fair amount of kids wrestling, a couple basketball players, couple baseball players, you know, and that's pretty much how it goes. There's not too many of our kids who are just single sport guys.
Yeah, that's what I figured. How about recruiting? So has that changed for you with, you know, with your players? Obviously, you've had a lot of kids. Like most recently, obviously the big lineman going to Duke, and but over the years, you've had a lot of kids go places. Has recruiting changed with coaches visiting for you, or has it stayed the same? Like what's kind of gone on? Because the transfer portal has been a big thing with these guys going back. And every coach has kind of told us something different, like if they've been affected or not. Like what have you seen from a recruiting standpoint?
So listen, over 25 years now, or 24 going into 25 years, I've been fortunate in that I've had everything from like a top 300 kids in the country, you know, down to like many Division III kids and everything in between, Ivy League kids, FCS kids, Power 5 kids that aren't, you know, star kids, but they're Power 5 scholarship kids, you know, like, so I've had the whole gamut. I've had a kicker going to Nebraska. It's a whole different side of recruiting that, you know, I really don't see too much of. So I've seen a lot of it. Yeah. I've seen a lot of it. And it's definitely, you know, during COVID was interesting because all the in-school visits stopped and like completely shut down for like almost 2 years. And then it's started to get back, but now also like the younger guys who recruit now, like the younger coaches and whatever, they do it different. Like it doesn't matter what level, like, you know, FCS or Power 4, I guess it is now, not Power 5, Power 4, but FCS, Power 4, and all the way down to Division 3. Younger guys do it different. Like I had a couple kids, like some good players, whatever, came in and told me they committed to X school, XYZ. I'm like, I never even saw the coach, spoke to him. Like, we all DM'd and whatever. And you know, I went up and visited and college coaches for the most part will tell you they do heavy work into, like, you know, looking into their character and their school work and whatever. And I've had kids get offers that nobody's even spoken to me or whatever. And like legit committable offers, you know,
right.
You know, and
we've been cut out of the mix.
Yeah. But then all the guys who last and the guys who stick around and the guys that you have relationships with over many years, those are the guys who do their homework and aren't doing it based on some cookie cutter formula or whatever. But, you know, they still have 100%. To match up to what they're looking for. But yeah, it's definitely changed. I mean, I could tell you a million stories about different guys and whatever and the approaches they take, but some great guys out there, and then some guys who are like a little, you know,
But those are the guys that you see. They like every time they come in, they're wearing a different color hat, right? Like it's like that kind of stuff too. You look at it like that. You know, a younger coach trying to, you know, progress his career in terms of like whatever. But then you're gonna have your stable guys that, like, you know, hey, Old Tappan is a place I'm going to hit when I'm in the roads, North Jersey. Like, that's an automatic. I have to go there because whether he has a guy for me or not, I'm going there because that relationship has been built. I think that's one of the things that social media has kind of cut the head coach out of it, because back in the day, that was your way to contact or talk to the kid. Now these guys just don't go, and they go directly right to, the kid himself or mom and dad, and it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I committed. And you're like, I didn't even have a conversation. Like, that's okay. And that's just how some guys conduct business.
Yeah. And that doesn't, I don't get insulted by it. The thing I worry about is, like, for the kids, the kids have to answer the most basic fundamental question at the beginning of all this recruiting is like, do you love football or do you love being a high school football player? Because there's a big difference. And being a high school football player is fantastic. It's great. Like, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of, like, things going on with it. It becomes part of your persona, who you are, and your social life and everything else. And a lot of kids love that. And then they say, well, I want to play football in college, but it's only these colleges I want to play at, or only. I'm like, then you don't want to play. Like, that's not going to work. It's, so you always have to ask that question first. And then
that's a great point.
Yeah. And,
if you're not passionate about it, like, believe me, like, Dave played at Division I level. I played at Division III level. Like, at least he got money for school. Me, I'm paying my own way to basically get the shit beat out of me, and spend all this time. Like, you're playing for the love of the game. If you don't love that, you ain't going to make it at any level, dude, And sometimes I think, like you said, Coach, these kids like the idea of.
Oh, we lost them.
We got him.
Well, I think the thing that really becomes important with it all is when you go to college, and this is the thing that I've always told kids this, I'm sure you tell them it, like, it is not like you're not having a conversation that you're going to have with your high school coach about some of the things that you have a conversation with him about. Like, and D3, you may be able to have a little bit more than maybe you do at the higher levels. But when you start to go high, like, I love when guys say they want to go to Power 4 or even FCS. And I'm like, listen, these are high, especially the position and above coaches, highly compensated individuals. This is their full-time job. This is that they're not seeing you in a classroom where they might get to know you, where you're, how you're a little bit more about your personality. Some coaches do, some coaches don't. But the biggest thing is that you have to love it, because you're going to work and you're going to be judged solely on your performance, not where you can be potentially. Yes, there are some coaches that will look at that, but where you are right now and where you're going. Like, are you moving in the direction that they need you to move to as a player? And with NIL and not NIL as much, but transfer portal, that's been forced upon them even more. And I feel like the culture of the newer coaches are like kill or be killed in a sense. Like, it's not. I don't know. When I was, now, luckily, obviously, I haven't coached high school since COVID, right? I've helped you out behind the scenes, but, like, I haven't coached since COVID on the field, so I don't really know the ins and outs, other than talking to you guys, the ins and outs of how things have changed. I talk to a lot of college coaches because of what I do, but I don't talk. I'm not dealing with it from a high school coach's standpoint. But I think that's the biggest thing, because even the young coaches that I talk to, they either don't have any real power and they're forced to kind of evaluate guys and just push it forward, or they're in transition constantly. Like, I'm at this job now, and more than likely I'm going to be at a new job next year. And whether this kid comes with me or doesn't come with me, like, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's irrelevant, because it's not, because they are judged on how well they bring in recruits. But, if they know they're moving on from year to year, that changes the relationships you have with coaches in the area. The one thing I heard from, I don't remember who it was we had on, but there's no longer, it might have been the Iona prep coach who said it. There's no longer the area coach that, no matter where he coaches at, like, I used to use Scott Lakatos as my example. Like, the guy was changing uniforms, but it was still Scott Lakatos in New Jersey, right? Like, so Scott, Dave, I'm with UConn now. I'm with Rutgers. I'm with Georgia. But he was still coming to the same area, right? But we probably don't even see Scott Lakatos anymore, right? So, I wonder if that's changed some of it. You used to have those relations with the area coaches, and those were kind of your guys.
Yeah, the two things that come to the front on that I've experienced is the first part is we had like a kid go to Duke, a lineman. The number of guys who came in to recruit who knew they weren't going to offer them, but now we're stopping in to develop like a relationship, knowing that they might be out of the portal in a year or 2 or 3, and wherever they may be, they want a relationship with the kid.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot too, Coach. Like, guys kind of looking down the road, right?
Yeah. So the kid's going to Duke. He had an offer from Syracuse, Duke, 1 or 2 or 3 other ACC schools, but every school in the country, like every school, stopped in to see the kid and they knew they weren't offering him.
Interesting.
Or they knew they weren't going to get him, right? Or something.
Yeah, like Texas A&M came in twice to talk to him.
Really?
Yeah, and they knew they weren't going to offer him, but they knew like he's also a kid the kid's 6'8", 300 pounds, could develop into an NFL lineman, and maybe we pick him up after 2-3 years. So the teams that are out there that know they can pay people to get them to move them over, they came in to visit. So that was the one part that's totally different.
Because they wouldn't even have wasted their time, right, in the past.
Yeah, they wouldn't come in. They're not wasting their time. They'd be like, he can never play for us, and they'd move on.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing you said?
The other thing is, like you were saying, there's not like those guys who are assigned to your area as much or whatever the guys are in. And I'm not criticizing anything, but they have more of a casual relationship with the truth and dealing with you, or mostly with the kid, not with you necessarily. So you're left to clean up messes after they come in and stop responding to the kid. Like,
when they
that's
just
the
like
one pet
peeve
I have the whole time. Like, come and visit the kid, tell the kid he's got to go to camp, which I don't think in 25 years I've ever had a kid go to a school that he went to camp to. And
paid for it.
And they go to camp and they say, yeah, you're on our board. And then they just stop messaging the kid when they realize the kid's a Division III player going to like a FCS camp or something like that. And there are other schools there. So there's still some productivity out of the camp. And then the kid comes to you and says, Coach, they're not answering me. They're talking. I said, yeah, that's the hard way to learn. Like, they're not interested anymore. It is what it is. The position's filled, doesn't mean anything for you. But my thing is, I never want to be the guy who tells a kid, you can't dream and go do this.
Right.
And be the guy. Like, but I'll also be honest where they're going to be recruited. Like, you might have a dream to go to this school, and they're not going to make it easy for you. You know what I mean? Like, that's
a great point. Your point about the camps, because I'm always baffled by this, I guess intrigued by it at the same time. But the invite to camp, where guys will flat out tell you, if you come to camp, you're going to have it. And how many of them have actually gotten offered, I would say, is below 10%. Okay. Because I feel like if they thought you were that good, and I'm not talking about Division III, really. Division III, I get it. And maybe even the Ivies, I don't know, but that might be changing. But Division III definitely, like, there's not going to be that many kids at that camp anyway. And probably is a good opportunity. There might be 80 kids there, right? So, but at the higher levels, I think that's been, if you were to ask your parents, they would probably say that's the most frustrating thing for them as a parent. And then obviously the kid is that they're told they're on the board. Like I've always told kids, like, press them. If you're going to go to their camp, press them. Where on the board are you? Like, are you on the board, like, like near the top where, but if you could tell by how they answer your question, it's it's a tough thing for kids to learn and parents to learn. But like, if a guy hems and haws a little bit with where you are on the board, you probably know that unless maybe you're a track guy that can run a 4.40, unless you're that guy, or they like the Duke kid from Duke who's going to walk in at 6'8" and And even him, by the way, because I remember this process with him, how it was like, what's going on here, right? Obviously it worked out great for him, but for a long time, I know you guys were like, what's going on? Because I remember Joe even asking me, like, we're frustrated with it a little bit, So, but yeah, that whole thing about where to go, because you can only choose so many places, right? Because you still have responsibilities with your team. So, I mean, let's say if you went to 5, that's a lot. Like that's a full summer. So most kids probably could do maybe 3. And if you choose the wrong 3, that's really like you could put yourself in a bad situation. Is that something that's hard? Like when you have to advise them, it's almost hard to even advise on it, right?
Do they even ask for your advice?
Yeah, it's really hard because the kids usually do ask for advice. They want to know mostly because there's going to be conflicts between what you're doing with them and and they want to be accountable and responsible and say, Coach,
I'm going to miss practice because
what do you think I should do? Right. Yeah. And my response is always like, if it's a place that you're dying to go to, like that's your dream school, and that's the only way you're going to get on their radar, then go ahead and give it a shot. But the other crap, like we have a kid going to LIU, receiver. It's fantastic. The kid's a great player. He's 6'3.5", 6'4", a huge wingspan, enormous hands.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Like a stud, and he can play safety, he can whatever, and
he's athletic as hell.
Yeah, and like a freak in the red zone, like an absolute freak. So can catch anything one-handed, whatever.
He won the game against Chelsea.
He does it all.
Exactly, his junior year. Yeah, so kid's a freak and wonderful kid. Loves football. One of his kids practices with a smile on his face all the time, always playing hard. And so you don't have enough nice things to say to him. And a really reputable, like every FCS school is like, yeah, we need him to come to camp. And some of these guys, I'm telling them, like, all right, but like, I know he's better than pretty much every receiver you got already. Like, I know that, he's going to come to you. Well, we need to see him run. I said, he's going to go run like a 4.85. That's it. And it's not going to be any higher. It might be low. It might be 4.9. Right. And they said, that's good enough for us. Whatever. We just got to see it. And then everybody tell him, like, the guys came in and said, he's our number one guy. They came in, went through, you've got to get this grade up. This is the one thing. If you get this grade to this point, we're offering you in June or junior year or whatever. And he does it, gets it, and he never hears back from him again. He's their number one guy on their list, so the crap that you hear, like, and and this is a kid, he went to every camp because everybody says, we got to see you run, and all the guys I tell him before he goes, he's going to run 4.9. It is what it is. If he was running 4.6, he wouldn't be going to the camp at Lehigh or Lafayette, Like, it doesn't. So like I said, like we get to the point, we've seen those types of players, like big time players, and where the kids can kind of slot. I'm not going to talk anybody into like taking one of my kids, because if you don't like them, you don't like them. That's fine. And we'll move on to something better. And I'm not talking them into it. So I don't over push kids, but there also comes a point, like, what level your kids can play at. Sometimes your kids are a little unrealistic and they think, I've had great players go to like good Division III schools. It still takes them a year or two to get on the field, they're not walking right out, and everybody's kind of surprised by that sometimes. But
that was, and that's a phenomenal example, because when he made that catch, okay, you see this in states like Florida or Texas, and maybe those are, I think part of it is that national recruiting has become a bigger thing, even for these schools in like the Patriot League.
Yeah, sure. They can.
So they go and say, like, okay, this kid made this catch. He's a great player. Like, he's no doubt a great player. I saw this kid down in Florida. Maybe I can get him too. And he runs a 4.65, and he won't go to Florida because there's not enough scholarship there. And I think that could be part of it. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's like my guess that some of those things are part of it. But I thought, like, when he made that catch, like, those are like, there are certain things that you see someone do, like his interceptions that I've seen, like there are certain things that people do that you say, that's a Division I player, scholarship player. Like, as soon as they do that, I say, okay, like, he could do things that nobody else could do. And I think that's the thing in recruiting for me, that has become the hardest, like with people that I work with and advise and stuff. Like we work with a quarterback in Texas that threw for it's ungodly how many yards and ungodly how many touchdowns. And he's not small, okay, but he's in the state of Texas, and he's like 6'1", and he's got a couple offers, but you'd be like, you're perplexed that he doesn't have at least more FCS offers, right? And you're talking to the parents, and the coach obviously is a great coach working with a great program he's at. And everyone's perplexed, you know what I mean? And they hire groups like us to help them, and we've been able to help them a lot. But we're perplexed, right? Because you see something on film and you go, in the old days, you would say, like, and I don't mean old days like old days. I mean like 10 years ago, old days. Yeah. You would see something like that and you'd say that he's good. He's going to be good. This guy, I'm going to send this out along with his highlights, and they're going to come in and he's going to get a couple of offers pretty quickly, right? That change, Devin Fuller took off for the first time, or the game against the great game when you guys played Paramus and you beat Paramus in that back and forth game. You knew those two quarterbacks, Fuller and Robertson, were going to go somewhere. There was no doubt after watching. If you didn't watch anything before that and you watched just that game, the way that those two guys were playing, you were like, these guys are going. Yeah. There was no doubt in your mind, right? Sure. Now, if you were to watch that game, Fuller, because of his speed, you would probably say, yeah. But Robertson, I think, would have to work harder than he would have back then. Like back then, you saw what Robertson did, and you just said, hey, this guy is, I think he went to Villanova. This guy is a slam dunk at minimum FCS. But now I would say that because they can recruit nationally, they'd be making a Robertson show up at camps, you know? Yep. And maybe Fuller doesn't have isn't like an All-American. Maybe he's not an All-American. Maybe he's, he's a 5 or 6 offer guy instead of a guy that has a million offers. And I think that's the thing that to me is so perplexing, because you want to like ask them, what has changed? Is it the portal that's made it change? What has made it change? And maybe it is the portal, because maybe they can like hedge their bets and stuff. I don't know. But what has changed so much that kid who we know would be a slam dunk 10 years ago somewhere is now has to work his butt off to get a couple of offers. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing to explain, I think, to explain to parents as a high school coach, because parents still think about it like 10 years ago. And it's not like not. Now they've added the new scholarship offers, but my brother, who's a Division III track coach, told me as soon as they came out with the increase in offers, he said, well, that's the end of Division III like track. And then he said, that's probably the for a lot of the Division III sports in general, that's going to be an issue. And I didn't understand that at first. He said, well, when they increase the scholarships there, the schools that have the budgets are going to, you name it? 2 seconds. They increase those scholarship budgets, the big schools like Ohio State, and they can increase it all, and they can match it with the girls. But you have to match, because of gender equity, you have to match on both sides. So below the Power 4 conferences, it's going to be hard for even the Group of 5 schools, or what they call Group of 6 now. Like, I say the Georgia States of the world, right? Like, what are they going to do? And then when it starts to trickle all the way down, now Division III programs start to have an issue, and how does that match up for them? And what do rosters start to look like? Because I thought, oh, well, it's great because they're going to increase it there. He's like, no, we don't have the budget to do those things. We don't have the budget to match the number of things. So what happens is some sports could go away. So I think the recruiting thing in general is really top heavy, very, very, very top heavy. Like, if you're Ohio State or you're Georgia or you're even Rutgers now, you probably do whatever you want and don't have to worry about a whole lot, right? Yeah. But if you're right below that level and then keep going down, it's very, very difficult. And then FCS is, I think these guys are all now just hoping like
they get the fallout from
fallout.
Yep. Or the transfers, right? Or like you said, Coach. That's why these guys are coming in, developing those relationships, knowing like, you know, guys may bounce back, or you know, it's to me like one thing my father always taught me was never burn bridges in any facet whatsoever, because you know, and I look at it now, right? Like even as a coach, like, hey, you may advise one of your players to go to a certain school and they go somewhere else, like no hard feelings, but now 2 years later, they're calling you saying, Coach, can you help me? Because, you know, this isn't the right move for me. Or, you know, my head coach just left, or my position coach left. And it's just difficult. It's not, you know, that decision. It's, you know, hey, this next 4 years is your next 40. Like that's not really the whole game anymore. I mean, when we were at that Monmouth 7-on-7, I talked to a tight end that had just come in at 2024. He enrolled in December. And Maryland kid, he had some, you know, Power 4 offers that fell through. And his literally, like talking to him, his plan was, you know, I'm coming to Monmouth for 2 years to develop, and then I'm transferring up. That was his plan. And that's just a whole different way of looking at the situation.
Yeah. That's the amazing part is that's the whole thing about the portal. It goes up and down. Like there's kids who drop down a level and kids who will be plucked to pull up a level. So that's the bizarre part about it. Like it's open season, like both ways. So it's like it's like they should have two separate ones. The ones that the kids who are looking to drop down and play somewhere, and the kids who are like, I'm selling myself to the highest bidder on here, you know, like
which is pretty much kind of what it is, right? It's like, you know, you're at like a freaking, like a, you know, you're at a cattle auction, like, right? Like, all right. I mean, and you've been in it long enough to know, like, that didn't happen. Like you transferred down. That was it. Like you didn't rarely
you go up, and now there's no.
That's what I'm saying. They would punish you. It was almost like punishment for going up, right? Like you had to sit, or you had to do something of that nature. But I mean, look, we've talked to a number of Ivy League coaches, and those are like the guys that have now graduated Ivy League, are high level players. Those are the ones that are getting plucked for that grad year to go and, you know, plug a spot on the O line, or go be a D end. And those guys have been produced to even be like, you know, higher draft picks because of that's the move they've made. And it's just, it's amazing to see where it is. Dave and I talk about it all the time. Like you have to constantly like stay in it to understand it. Like, even if you're a parent who had a kid who went through this 2 years ago and now his younger brother is, like, it's totally changed game. Like, you have to be in it and understand it and ask those questions. And it's constantly changing and evolving. And it's just eye-opening, really.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I think the college coaches also, I think some of them, you know, they live within the system they're in, you know, and
they have it. It's brutal for those.
It's brutal for them. It's, you know,
that's not something that's, you know, it's wild.
Listen, when money gets involved in a really, really extreme level, right, where it is now, like I guess it's like the success of football at the top especially has become so high, and everyone loves watching college football, which has created avenues, obviously, for student athletes that never happened before. But with all of that, and obviously created avenues for coaches at the highest level like never before. I think that like when you get to a system that was not really meant to be a free market system, but now is kind of a free market. Like everybody gets, you know, finance industry, right? Free market system. Like there's parameters around that system. There's parameters around general business because, you know, it's a, you know, somewhat of a market system, and you understand what the system is. Mm-hmm. But what's happened in college sports is it's kind of like a free market system, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and when it's a free market system, but I call it, you know, people call it crony capitalism, right? It's almost like a crony capitalist system. And what happens is when you get in that kind of system, nobody really knows what the game is. The game's changing, right? Mm-hmm. And the top players kind of know it because they're in control for the most part. Like they're the ones succeeding. But the ones who aren't in it, who are lower level, kind of are trying to figure out how the system works, right? and new coaches, maybe they get on at Ohio State, they're trying to figure out how the system works, right? And so that crony Catlins, you don't know what this player wants financially. You don't know what this coach is deserving of financially until the end of the season, depending on their success or what. Yeah. So it's kind of like this moving target where there's no rules, essentially, right?
It's unregulated, and that's
right.
The thing
it's like
they're
the Wild West.
To deal with. Yeah, and like the NFL is regulated. You got a salary cap. You got to work within a certain framework.
We've talked about this.
So, I mean, this is completely unregulated. You go back in history. I'm a history teacher and economics teacher. Like, you go back in history, any unregulated market's going to be just survival of the fittest. And it's going to end up being just those couple schools are going to be able to operate. And if they're going to have to do something.
You're talking about the late 1800s with, you know, your guys with, controlling markets with, your Fords and your Vanderbilts and, you know what I mean? Like, your Fricks, right? Like, the guys that controlled all your Carnegies, right? Like, those guys that, created those monopolies and controlled everything. And you can see it, right? Like, the big wigs of college football. Oregon comes out. We have unlimited NIL. You know what I mean? Like, it's really what it is. Like, you're linking everything up to
we need Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, we do.
He's the one that
Teddy Roosevelt to get this thing regulated.
If anybody really understands their history, Teddy Roosevelt changed the game of football to make it safer so that we're actually in this world right now. He brought multiple coaches to the White House and said, I love this sport, but if you don't change it, I mean,
he broke the monopolies too. He broke the monopolies.
Trust buster, baby.
He's the best, dude. He's the man, dude. He also took a bullet to the chest,
that's right.
We need to find a Teddy Roosevelt. Derek, that's a great point. That's very, it's one of my favorite things on the History Channel. I watched I don't know if you guys have watched it, J.P. Morgan and
the men who built America, bro.
Great.
Those guys, the men who built it's so amazing to first of all, I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's kudos to those guys that. I'm sure when they built those monopolies, especially like Rockefeller, who came from nothing, he probably sat there. He said, I did all this, and now they want it they want to take it away from me, but it's so interesting how you were able to get a handful of guys and they started to work with each other, and then they all got to the extreme top, such extreme. First of all, my brain wouldn't be able to get me there from a thought process of how they built all those, not just built it, but went from A to Z. But then to for Rockefeller and Carnegie and Morgan to be able to finance it. And it's fascinating to me, but that is what's happened in college football because, and by the way, they didn't figure it out like those guys did, and it's good that Teddy Roosevelt kind of busted it up to a certain extent to give more people opportunity to succeed. Although what did really happen? It just became Exxon, BP. It just became one of those anyway.
They just changed the name and put
they just changed the name. It was no longer Standard Oil. But it really is interesting because that's basically what goes on in college. It's actually going to be a fascinating study, but a lot of college kids who could play in college at lower levels, they all dream that. And it's very hard to say that there are other opportunities there. And then, to get those college coaches to recognize it is also a totally different thing. I mean, I guess that's from a high school football standpoint, it almost makes high school football, it gives you the opportunity to tell them, hey, listen, this is the one time for sure that you're going to have all your guys around pushing in the same direction because now, even if you play in college and even if you're a Division I player, that school that you start out with, unless you're dead set and staying there no matter what, which if I went to Duke, by the way, I don't care if they made me a third stringer. And I'm getting
that's one of those places you're
getting that degree. I ain't leaving that place.
Yeah.
But some, I understand, players will leave. I see in the transfer portal, when I see a kid, they'll leave these great academic schools.
Yeah.
And go to a lesser academic school.
Just not where their thought process
football.
is.
That part to
it's
me
about
is
the now.
what are we doing? You know what I mean?
They're not thinking down the road, right? They see money, they see dollar signs right now, and that's what they jump at. And
or
go,
opportunity.
Hey, man,
it may be opportunity. It may not even be dollars. It may be I could go play here, and I'm gonna, if something. This is not to make fun of Eastern Michigan or anything like that, but if I went to Duke and then I was the backup, and then Eastern Michigan said I'd be the starter, I'm gonna have to figure out how to start at Duke. I'm gonna have to figure that out. You know.
Yeah, you need, like anything, we always forget they're still kids. They need to be advised the right way. They need some mentorship or parental guidance or somebody who's experienced, and hopefully the people they're dealing with is what you always advise your kids when going to school. You're dealing with good, honest people who are, forget the football stuff, like people who are going to treat you the right way and give you the right advice and whatever, help you along the way. So, I mean, that's what we all do.
No doubt about it. And I don't want to let you leave without touching on this. And I tell my wife this all the time. Derek, Coach is not just a phenomenal coach, but he's a phenomenal father. And I want to say to him, over all the years and getting to know Thomas and man, when I came back, when I was walking down with you guys at Rutgers, Thomas remembered everything about me, and it's a tribute to you. It's a tribute to Thomas. It's a tribute to you. And I would say that probably also gives you
important.
Well, it gives you a little extra soft spot for kids, and understanding kids, which, obviously helps you as a coach, but because of the things that over the years and the job you've really done with him, and I mean, when I see him, it's literally, and it's obviously very rare now, but it was such a joy just to see him. It was such a joy, and
awesome.
It really, really is awesome. You're a phenomenal father.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. That's nice of you. He's got a great mom, a great sister too that help him out along the way. So
takes a village, right? Takes a village.
Him in check. Yeah. But he's great. He loves. You know what? I'm fortunate. We're blessed. He's actually running down the stairs. Tom, come here. You want to say hi to Coach Dave? I hear him running down the steps. Want to say hi to Coach Dave? He's on the Zoom.
Hi, Coach Dave.
Hey, Tom. What's going on, bud?
Hi.
How you been?
I'm good.
You're good. It's good to see you, man. It's good to see your face, buddy. I miss you.
February 1st.
He's the man.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome, Coach. Hey, Coach, I'll let you go. It's been great having you on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's awesome.
Coach. Thanks for
good catching up with you guys, for sure.
Absolutely. Good luck this season, huh? Do good things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I will see you soon, Coach.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Have a great day.
See you guys.
All right. Bye. That was great. That was great. Oh, he was working towards our time frame records.
I might shit if he's group 3. I'm group 3. I'm scared.
Well, you would only play them if you went north or south, right?
Final group 3 final would be against them if that's how what it came down to, right? Because everybody plays down to a group champ.
Well, you're probably a year or two away from that, or you think you're that? You think you're there now?
10. No, are you crazy? Maybe if I had a couple of apartment complexes, we'd be all right.
You probably do have a couple of apartments.
Get some address changes, but other than that, I don't think that's how it's working. But
well,
yeah, dude, he's phenomenal. He's great. You can tell the impact he's had on his players and all that other kind of stuff. Runs a good, quote unquote, I call it clean program, right? You never hear about any issues going on with any of that stuff. He's not overkill when it comes to certain things or whatnot, but he's gonna voice his opinion and do what he thinks is the right thing, and he's earned that, being there and being as successful as he had in all those years. You know what I mean? He can write his own ticket in terms of when he wants to be done or whatnot, but you can tell he's still got a lot of juice left in it, dude. He ain't going anywhere.
Oh yeah, coaches. I want to say I would say he's a maximum of 5 years older than me. Maybe trying to think because he was definitely in the 80s. I think he might have, maybe he was a little. I always think of things as Satterbrook was known for running backs in the old days, and like I was kind of like, one of those guys in that crew, and I always would think about as a kid the errors of each running back. So before me, like, okay, that was the era of Jim Pastoric, that was the era of Scott Elliott, that was the era of Joe Bianco. And so I think I want to say he's either Joe Bianco, early 80s, or maybe he might be mid. I think he might be mid 80s when he graduated. So he's probably, I would say, it might be mid, like 50. He's in great shape, always works out. So
that's huge too. Like, you know how it is? Like, that's important. But his players, I mean, listen, he's produced a lot of guys. He's been in a lot of state finals. He's been won a lot of championships. Like, looking at his schedule, man, he opens up with West Essex. Like, he opens up with a hammer right off the shot. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
they love playing.
Listen,
they love playing
his strength index. His strength index is 79.91, which is way higher than a lot of teams, dude. I mean, he's got West Essex, Riverdale, Bergenfield, Ramapo, Paramus, Northern Highlands, Wayne Hills, Pascack Valley. I mean,
yeah, I remember that from when I was there, and then obviously his last few years of helping him out. They would always have Rampo.
They don't dunk anyone, man.
No, public school wise, listen, he was one of the last. Believe it or not, this is before I got there, but he was one. I remember this. He was one of the last guys to continue to play the parochials every year. He would play St. Joe. He would play St. Joe's, and he would just deal with he'd hang for a half, but it wasn't like But he would play. He was the last.
He didn't care. I love that.
He was the last of the guys. I'm telling you, he was the last of the bigger schools to play.
And that's how it should be, though. Like,
he was the last of them.
He's not ducking anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't.
Before it became too crazy. Yeah, before it became like now,
Oh, now it's like.
I mean, Bergen Joe's. I don't know what Bosco's situation is now, but Bergen Joe's, as far as what talent, I'm not talking about what their wins or losses are going to be. I have no idea. But as far as the talent level they have, I mean, every position is like, at least an FCS guy almost.
At least. That's why I said, like, hey, I know sometimes you have that player, that dude, but every year, like, you might not have a Fuller, but he's got a multitude of players and look, they might just be great high school players, but he has a guy. But he gets them to play at a level that's FCS. FBS, right? That kid he's got now is a stud, dude.
Tappan is one of those places that each year there's definitely a guy that I would say is probably a minimum FCS, and then sometimes he has two, but his staff, and we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but like his staff, obviously he's phenomenal. His staff is phenomenal. Like those guys, and they're all, honestly, they're all cool guys. Like they're all like not just great football coaches and stuff, but they're all like really cool guys. I think that's a harder thing than ever to be able to get to mesh as a
and keep guys together, right? And that are okay with that role. You know what I'm saying? Like, because guys want to move, they want to jump here. They, people have kids, like that stuff changes. Like guys that are just like, hey, this is the role that I am. Like, we're good.
I think I'm going to get Joe Klaus on because I want to. First of all, Joe will be. Joe is the spark plug. Where Coach Dunn is very calm and steady. Joe will be great to have on, and just to talk defense. By the way, his the way his brain works defensively,
his scheme.
No, but the way he thinks about it,
the way
his scheme is his scheme. Like he's evolved it.
I think that's one of the most underrated things is like, sometimes you got to really understand, like if you've known me now forever, like you can understand why I do things certain ways. Like when it comes to like, you know what I mean? Like if you're, listen, those guys have been together so long, like he understands his staff to a point where he knows exactly how they're thinking and then what they're doing because of that thinking, right? Like that's when you have that within a staff itself, it's why you look and every year you say, oh, Old Japan's winning, Old Japan's winning. Like that's what it takes, I think, to be successful. Like you can do it the other way, but you have to be one hell of a coach and have a lot of surrounding support when you're constantly turning things over and doing that kind of stuff. Plus,
and now they're great, but I'll tell you this is the other thing that you would have it and with guys that were on the same page with it, but there's a level as intense as they are. I'm telling you, they are hilarious. So
of course, you have to have a level of humor.
They are so funny, and they all have like their own personalities where it's like you're all talking and it's just funny. Like it's
but the kids also react to that, right? And that's how they've built that culture. And
like said,
like even like, and those kids know like, hey, this is a time where it's like this, and now it's all right. Hey, it's time to button down and like let's roll. But at the end of the day, like it's all about winning, and we're gonna do what needs to be done to win. And I think that's, like he said, like when we talked about the evolution of his HVAC and all that stuff, like that just came because it was another way to put another kid in a good situation. And then also, okay, we can do this, right? Like, so you constantly evolve and with your kids in mind first, like off the field, on the field, he handles all of it.
My only concern as far as like as a dad, from a dad standpoint, that a lot of because of I think the age that I am, when my kid gets to high school, I just hope that a lot of these guys that have really done great things are still around to maybe coach my kid because
you hope.
I hope because because obviously the world's changing for coaches a lot.
Big time, man. Like,
and so obviously
unless you're in Texas, you ain't really getting respected.
Look how many in the Shore that exited, right? So
it's 7 or 8 this year was like it was like 7 or 8,
and a lot of guys that were a few legends, right? So
guys that you would be like, wait, he's hanging it up, he's got years in the tank and all that kind of stuff, like.
And and you say to yourself, oh, I wouldn't have mind and it's not like they're old either. So, but I think that's evolving, and I'm sure some of the younger guys will replace that, in time. But what I do think about some of the guys in that, like, I don't know, mid-40s to like 68.
Yeah, like almost like you don't want to say midlife crisis, but like midlife crisis.
That age, well, I'm saying the coaches in that age range,
right,
grew up in a time period where they saw all these things happen, so they kind of have a different perspective.
Because they don't want it to, like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, am I going to literally leave my stamp on this and do this for however many years and I'm going to be a football coach? Or do I want to go and do, maybe something else or test the waters or,
I don't know
guys
if they
just
anything else.
relocating, right?
I think they're going to retire. I think they'll retire.
People don't, right? Or they get pushed out or, people don't live in the same place anymore for 40, 50 years.
Hey, Howard Schuman got pushed out at 80, how old is he? 85. One of the most, I would say, ridiculous things in any coach. When I say legend among legends, but you get it. The administration is a newer administration, and
hey, I want to go a different direction.
Hey, listen,
we're gonna do
his
this.
wife had cancer. They didn't like that he was taking her to the treatments. Okay. She died, obviously, sadly. And then the guy had to go in for like a major, when I mean major back surgery, like could possibly not make it through, made it through because he's like iron, but made it through. And obviously he's doing very well. And they used all those things to like push him out. And I say, in a world.
If people want to do it like, come on, man. Do you really want to be a part of that? You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the thing that I think that like younger people can learn, just like we were able to learn from older people, be willing to learn from older people. And that's hard because they can get information from anywhere. And it's hard. Like you'll see it with your kid. I see my kid could go on YouTube and search for something and find information on it. Like he can know the exact same thing that I know about the history of football. Right. In his head, right? Because I lived it. He can go and search it, watch a whole video on Dan Marino, regurgitate it back to me and maybe know even the stats more intimately than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What other time period in the world? Obviously, you had to read books to get that. Now, how many books can you read at a time? You know what I mean? So now you can go and watch a 3-minute video, get that information on, let's say, Dan Marino, Gail Sayers, Walter Payton. And then if I asked you a question about it, you could regurgitate it back to me as if you lived in that era.
Right.
But you really didn't know what that time period is like, but you know the information about that era. And I think that's the hardest thing for younger coaches getting, because you could theoretically, if you wanted to, watch enough video to know maybe even more than the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why teaching is so hard. You give out a syllabus, somebody can go do all the research and figure out everything that's going on in the course, right? So why do I need to teach it if I gave you a syllabus, you went and Googled everything, and now you know all the information. Now, is it correct information? Well, that's on you, right? Which is why, to me, especially being a history teacher, like, as long as I know you have the ability to go and find the information or get the right answers, like, that's all I care about. Like, I'm not going to sit here and make you memorize dates and all that other shit. You can go look it up.
Good point. And you'll remember it from looking it up. So
absolutely. And then, like, it's more of the process to look it up, right? Like, let me teach you that, right? Because if I can teach you how to fix a problem or how to find an answer, that relates to everything in life itself. Like, figure out a way to do it. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't used to be able to do that. You'd have to read a whole book to figure out one thing that now literally takes you 10 seconds. You don't even have to type. You could freaking ask Siri and get an answer. It's a different era, man. Like, you got to figure that stuff out.
That's why I do love like math, like not the new school math, but like the memorization math, because it forces you to be analytical. Like the
absolutely
to
like the new school math was based off of kids not being able to memorize times tables. You know what I mean? Like, we used to get
I like that
tables.
you could memorize it, you know?
You remember those sheets of 100 times tables, and you just have to go through them and answer them over and over and over and over. It's just part of it. Like, you had to memorize it in order to move forward. Now it was like, okay, well, if they can't memorize that, well, let's give them a way to go and do it. Now, yes, that teaches you that there's a process to getting an answer, and you have to go through it to get it. I understand. But there's also some things that, like, dude, you just got to remember that, right? Like, you know, like, I don't know how many times.
And I think that all ends up failing because as like AI and computers have evolved, like going through that process is just dumb, right? You're better off trying to learn the times table.
Now it's like, why are you taking the time to whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like, speed it up. Like, let's go, you know, so.
You'd be better off, like, I want to know 9 times 9. If I had to memorize, that's 81. That's faster than the guy having to look it up. But if you use the old method, the new method that they came up with, you're better off just looking it up, you know, because
100%. Because now you're taking all that time to get to the same spot.
It's very interesting. That was
good. He's good, man. I like him. I would love to play for him. I'd run through a wall.
Oh, you would.
And his players love him, right? Because
they love
what it is.
They love, like, he's got the combination of like I said, like he has the combination of like understanding the ins and outs of the kid with the offensive, like, you know, genius like mindset, like within his, like, he really, that system, you know, like when I originally, when I worked with Nympheus, I took some pieces of his system, and then
right. Well, that's what you do. You everybody takes a little bit of something from here, a little bit of something from here, and now all of a sudden you got something great.
His system, as far as DJ's most brilliant thing to me always was his methodology of the no huddle and the numbering system. I always thought that was he knows offense, you know. I mean, that I all know, but and he knows the passing game and all those kind of things very intimately. But I always thought that the way he made it simple for the kids from that standpoint was just brilliant.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest puzzle pieces, man, is how can you relate? How can you make something so simple that your players aren't, you know, sitting here like worrying about that, right? Because now they can play faster, play better, like, because if there's less thinking, it doesn't slow it down and you can just kind of go. That's, I think, one of the
Dunn's done that with the
best coaches are the ones that can get their system through to the kids in the easiest way. And now, to show
Dunn's done that with that spread wing T type system. 100%. I don't know what you call it, but he's done it with. He's made the actual play system fast and easy, but it also looks. It really is dynamic. It's dynamic.
Yeah.
Like you can't you don't know what he's gonna do, but like you're like, well, he's not in really that many sets, but like you don't know what he's gonna do. Like
it's and those kids are so good at what they do, it doesn't matter what you do, right? Like I think that's one of the things that was built into us when I was, the run and shoot and everything. It's like, look, I don't care what they do. We're gonna be so good at what we do that that's not gonna matter. And I think that's an approach that, I don't know how many guys actually take it that way. They might say it, but I don't know if they actually do it. Like, that's what you have to, and if your kids buy into that, like, I don't care what they do, worry about us. It's about us and how good we are. Like, that changes the name of the game, I think.
Gus Mal, I don't know if I haven't watched his games anymore.
UCF.
Yeah, I haven't watched as much, but when Gus Malzahn was at Auburn and when he was in high school, that's what Dunn's offensive play system reminded me of. Like, I was like, wow, I actually saw this. It wasn't exact, but I saw this when I used to talk to Gus Malzahn in the mid-2000s when he was a high school coach. He was winning all those games before he went to college. And I saw him use that system. And then he was using it at Auburn. Like, he was using that wing T blocking from Gunn. And I was like, wow. So when I actually coached with Dunn and like he was kind of doing that, I was like, wow. I'm like, okay, this is a great as a coach, a great opportunity to learn this system, because I definitely, I played against the wing T and coached against it and knew how to stop it, maybe defensively, like what I would do, but never ran the offensive version of it and how it would work and like the blocking scheme and the ins and outs of it. It's such it really is like, and it really is an amazing blocking system. That's the best. Like, let's take all the back part of it and guys, the system blocking wise is so good and so sound. It's like, it's understandable to see why there are people who just run the old school wing T still, like literally just because of the blocking system. They don't even care. They like, my quarterbacks, just handing off the ball most of the time and only running boot and waggle. But it's the blocking system is so good. But anyway, let's get off it. Great podcast. And good luck.
That was excellent.
Good luck at camp this week.
Here we go.
Get after those boys.
It's not even like it used to be, though. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like, not that it's disappointing, but you just don't have to prepare. Like, okay, here we go. You know what I mean? Like, oh boy. I mean, like, even like even Aaron Rodgers has talked about it. Like,
you're not stressed in preparation. Yeah,
it's mental, and plus you've done already so much work throughout the summer that, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of this stuff is just like, now the fun part is like, hey, now we're putting on pads, but even that's not like it used to. Like, you ain't starting practice with an Oklahoma drill anymore on the first day of pads, dude. Like,
no, you're right. No, you're 100% right. All right, everybody.